Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this morning's meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee. So I'm Julie Stewart-Turner and Chair of the committee. We'll just do a few introductions for the panel to my left. Do you want to introduce yourself, Jenny?
I'm Jenny Bryce-Chan, Governance Officer.
Councillor Gough-Massive, member of this panel. Lead member for Corporate Scrutiny.
Councillor Rob Walker, and I'm lead member for Economy and Neighbourhoods panel.
Councillor Liz Smage, and I'm lead member for Adults and Social Care.
Cathal Burke, lead member for Children and Young People.
Wonderful. So item 1 on the agenda is minutes of the previous meeting. Are we happy to approve the minutes as an accurate record? Everyone's in agreement with that. Did say on the actions to follow up is to circulate a copy of the CCTV feasibility report. That is in the Scrutiny office, just waiting to be photocopied, and then we'll go out in the post to you. Had hoped to bring it today, but Penny, who's looking after it, is poorly, so she's not here. So you should have that shortly. Interest, members got any interest to declare? Yes, Rob.
Yeah, sorry, sticking with the minutes, on page 3, when we were looking at the domestic abuse report and the new policies, I think I'd suggested that it would be a good thing for it to be more widely discussed and shared with other councillors. Has anything happened with that? You know, if the provision has been made for somebody to go out to the groups to speak to them about the new policy?
I don't know, but I do have a follow-up meeting arranged next week with the lead officer, and I can bring that up with her then about sharing the data with at group meetings. And then I'm going to the police and crime panel in November to discuss the support across the region for different elements of the domestic abuse strategy. Okay. Then this is admissions of the public is very welcome. All of this agenda is in public. We're going to have to skip item 4 at the moment because we are waiting for Shabir, leader of the council, to join us. So we'll go on to item 5 and we can go back to that item. So item 5 is, Carl, do you want to give us an update on your ad hoc panel?
Thank you, Chair. I'll go through the work of the scrutiny panel for the ad hoc panel, which is elective home education. So in 2017, July, I met with the Director for Children's Services to go through the work programme for the Children and Young People Scrutiny Panel. As part of the workload identified was elective home education and around increasing numbers both locally and nationally, and it was seen as an area that we as a panel could add some benefit to and add some value to, and perhaps make some recommendations at the end of a piece of work. So EHE is the term used by the Department for Education to describe parents' decisions to provide education for the children at home instead of sending them to school. It's important to know this is different to home tuition provided by a local authority or education provided by a local authority other than at school. For a significant number of families, it is a decision based on their philosophical, spiritual or religious outlook. For others, it is to meet the specific needs of a child or children. However, the panel was informed that some parents have reported that an issue at school has led to their consideration of electively home educating their child. The panel was advised that schools are not required to give detailed information as to why a child may be taken off their school roll. Therefore, officers only have limited information as to what may have happened to influence a parent's choice to electively home educate. Although contact is always made with parents following a child being taken off roll, parents are not obliged to take up the offer of a meeting. The panel has concerns about the practice of removing children off a school roll in order to protect schools' performance, results, often called off-rolling. In Kirklees, the highest number of electively home-educated children is in the Key Stage 4 cohort. and the panel will continue to explore some of the reasons behind this. The panel are concerned about children's progression onto further education and employment, and we'll be talking to parents about their experiences of off-rolling. And some of this has taken place last week, where we met a number of parents in Dewsbury and also in Huddersfield, and some of the concerns around off-rolling were raised. I think that's somewhere where the panel will need to look further and perhaps get information from schools if they are willing to provide the additional information that goes with that. For the academic year 2017-18, approximately 450 children were registered as being electively home educated for either all or part of the academic year. At the start of September 2018, around 300 children were known to be home educated. The panel has been informed that there are currently no facilities in Kirklees for children who are electively home educated to take GCSE exams, should they wish to do so. Although it's not a requirement of children who are electively home educated to sit any exams at all, this is somewhere where the panel will look at how we can improve the offer for all of the children in Kirklees. So the panel would like to ensure that the best possible outcomes are offered for children who are electively home educated, and the panel will continue to scrutinise the local authority's responsibilities and offer for electively home educated children. The work of the panel is informing the proposed future arrangements for the local authority's approach. Some other information ongoing is the Home Education Duty of Local Authorities Bill completed its House of Lords stages in July 2018 and was presented to the House of Commons on the same date. The second reading is at the House of Commons on the 26th of October 2018. And should the Home Education Bill gain royal assent, this will increase the duty of the local authority and will have financial implications on the services. So we're monitoring that as we work through our plan. The panel will meet with a number of other witnesses and groups as we continue our work. Some of these will be a leading elective home education expert, other local authorities in the area to consider their offer for elective home education, parents of those local authorities mentioned above to explore their experiences, head teachers forums, primary, secondary and also special schools. So the work is ongoing. We're being kept very busy. We value the input from local parents coming to meet with us as well, and we're working well as a panel and with the officers, and hopefully we'll be able to make some positive contributions and recommendations at the end of the workload.
More of an observation really than a question, but yeah, because I did go over to Dewsbury and helped out with some of the discussions with parents, which I found very interesting. But one of the parents I met there, and then another parent I met last Friday, was a parent within my own ward, did suggest there's a little bit of a grey area between home education being an elective decision where the parent makes a sort of positive decision to do that, and other situations where they almost feel that they're pushed into it because of the lack of adequate provision within school and from support services. And I think the exploration of why that happens will be something really interesting for your panel to pursue further.
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned earlier, for a significant number of families, they decide to elect home education for philosophical reasons of their own ideologies. And they set out on a work programme and a plan and are very well informed. Often they're in education themselves, and they've got the skills, they've got the resources to be able to do that. For others, when I mentioned off-rolling, it seemed to be that some schools took the approach of pushing children in a certain direction at risk of permanent exclusion, and to avoid the permanent exclusion, the best option would be to be taken off the roll. At that point, they're given very little advice, help, support and assistance, and often their education suffers as a result. Whereas had they been excluded in a way, that would have been better for them, because then they would be taken up and they would be offered alternative provision or education within the authority. And that has come through from a lot of feedback from parents the support that's offered, and the impact that has, and the role of the schools in supporting at that stage. But schools are under pressure, but that's no excuse to push a young person in a certain direction without getting that support and help.
Thanks, Chair. Can you just go through 1.6, the legal requirement where the council are not, there's no legal requirement for the council to understand how many kids are off-rolled and being taught at home. The other question I've got is, the first is a comment. The second question is there any way of the council offering support? You mentioned earlier about the fact that some of these kids don't have to sit the exams. So we can actually take a proactive role in terms of creating a guideline where they can follow, and if they need to go down the option of sitting exams, GCSEs or anything else, they can do. But is there any support in terms of giving books, textbooks, that kind of thing, for them to develop a bit further rather than just having kind of various different approaches of home education?
Yeah, I think the home education bill will have an impact on what the local authority does and what we need to provide. Currently, the authority can offer to meet with parents, but the parents don't have to meet and don't have to show the work that's being produced or indeed have access to the young person that is educated at home, although the council and the authority does everything that it can do to ensure that safeguarding is in place and that young people are accessing the information. Now, some of what you mentioned will form perhaps some recommendations from the panel about what we can offer and what is the offer from the authority when it comes to elective home education. Certainly around exams, resources and that, and lots of discussions have taken place. So I don't want to preempt what will come out of this, but there are some of the concerns that we are aware of and will be considering.
In regard to taking the GCSEs, what do other authorities in West Yorkshire do? Have you explored that area yet?
Okay, so as part of the work programme, we'll be visiting Leeds and hopefully some other local authorities to see what they do and what the offer is for them. I know that certainly in the past there used to be a high school or a college that would allow external candidates to sit exams. And I think that's something that we would like to reintroduce and build up some relationships and links with the high schools or with colleges, so that there is an opportunity for those young people that want to sit a GCSE exam, the opportunity to do it as an external candidate. And then we've got to look at the costs as well. And a lot of this is down as well to the awarding bodies, depending on the subjects that they wish to take.
Yeah, this is an issue I've been aware of for a number of years, because when I worked in a local college, we sometimes got requests from parents to allow their youngsters to come in to sit various exams. One possible solution, I don't know whether it's been explored, it could be linked to the virtual college that we operate. I wonder if that could be registered as an exam centre and have a base where young people could come in to sit exams rather than going into one of the secondary schools.
Yeah, it's something that we've been aware of and we'll look to explore further. But I think the ultimate thing is that we do have some provision for those young people that wish to sit exams, and looking at what we can offer ourselves and not just go to other high schools and colleges. But it is worrying when you feel a young person is, some of the most important exams they'll take, GCSEs, trying to get their English and maths, and then to have to worry and think about where can I sit the exams. And if a young person has built themselves up into that position where they're ready and able to take the exams, we need to make sure that we can offer that, and then look at the costs and look at the awarding bodies as well. But not all of the home educated children will sit exams.
Just to remind that this is still work in progress, so it's still exploring these options, so we're not giving final recommendations now. Liz?
Yeah, I just wondered what the role of the virtual school was, because you mentioned virtual college, but we've got a virtual school, haven't we, as well? So is the panel exploring the role of the virtual school in relation to supporting parents and children who are home education?
Yeah, we're looking at all options and all resources that are available within the authority to do that. Also looking at resources, because I think mentioned earlier about what resources can be offered to families who wish to do more creative subjects, perhaps art or even geography, and what resources the authority may have to loan out to parents. So we're looking at everything, but we're still working through everything. We've got lots of key witnesses still to meet, information from other local authorities, and still meeting with parents.
And you mentioned as well that a lot of parents take their children out of school because of support issues. They don't feel they're being supported in school. So you mentioned specific reasons, but is that also, could that be health reasons as well, and special education needs and mental health issues, and how can we help with that so they don't need to come out of school?
I think, and that's what we've got to look at when we're looking at home education. Those parents who choose to electively home educate, and those that feel that they've been pushed down a certain direction. And the panel, I would hope that we would have conversations with schools to understand better the underlying issues around that. And there are issues within schools. Sometimes we've had reports that bullying could be an issue, mental ill health, and other situations happening. But it's what we can do as an authority to then support them and offer the best package possible for them to be able to sit the exams. But it is very worrying that some children are forced down that route, and then with very little support and very little information coming from the schools as to why that has happened and taken place.
Yeah. Fairly specific kind of situation that I came across last week was where you may have a youngster who, because of, could be mental health issues, it could be neurodivergent issues such as Asperger's or autism or something like that, and youngsters end up not being able to sit their exams in year 11, and parents wish them to return to education to be able to study for GCSEs. Well, certainly according to the parents, there didn't seem to be a lot of support for that. And I think it is important because each year you are going to get a small number of young people who are in that situation. It would be good to look at how we could perhaps support them better.
Yeah, no, and we're looking at that as well, and we're also looking at the links with FE as well. When a young person has perhaps completed the GCSEs and they're looking at further education, and perhaps those who are younger, maybe at age 14, and what opportunities are available to them within FE, because I know at the moment there seems to be very little. We've heard reports of young people having to go to colleges in other authorities in order to get that support. Some of the other, say, around elective home education, those who want to do it, we have some young people that attend school on a part-time basis, who may go for a day a week or a day and a half a week. So that has to be looked at as well. But some schools do it and some don't. And then that's how it's marked on the register and the responsibility then of the school. But it's building it up for those who do wish to, but it's important to note that those who do decide, and for their own reasons to do it, the majority seem to be doing a very good job. They know exactly what they're doing, and they've got the skills and the resources to be able to do it. So we need to look at all the different aspects of home education and what we can do as authority to support those who need it, and also to be there in case others do require it at some stage.
And it sounds like you've done some excellent work so far, but still a long way to go by sounds of it. So I'm just wondering if you've got any idea what the timescale would be. When do you hope to complete the work by? And also if you need any further assistance, if you've got any stumbling blocks anywhere that you need help with. Yeah,
we have kindly been given support from members here when we've been meeting with different groups at different times, so different days and different times in different areas. So we're trying to reach out to as many families, parents, carers as we can do in order to get that. So that perhaps there may be an opportunity for other members to get involved, to meet with parents, as has been done already, and that was really beneficial for the panel to be able to do that, because we will get stretched. It is quite intense workload. As to when we will complete will depend on when we can finalise meetings with other local authorities and with parents groups, because we're going to go back and meet with more parents as well. But we're not going to rush it, but we will aim to get it done as soon as practically possible once we have spoken to all of the key witnesses that we've identified.
Right, so yeah, I'm sure everybody would be happy to help if you just let us know as and when. Just thank you. That's just for noting the progress report. Thank you for that. Item 6 is we're hoping to approve today a new voluntary co-optee for the Economy and Neighbourhoods panel. So, Rob, do you want to give everyone an update on that?
Yes. Councillor Turner and myself met with Andrew Bird a few weeks ago. It was after one of the early meetings, and he came along to observe the last panel meeting, although we did agree with him that it was fine for him to contribute questions, which he did extremely effectively. And I think given the breadth of his experience in business and with other community organisations such as the Media Centre and the Lawrence Batley Theatre, I think he's got a great deal to add really to the work of the panel. He seems happy to join, so I think that's a very happy state of affairs really. I think it will strengthen the panel.
Okay. Any comments? Right, it seems like everybody, we all are happy to approve Andrew Bird as an interim co-optee. We hope to start the recruitment process, or we hope to have started it by now, so with holidays and sickness it's been put back, but in the next few weeks definitely hope to start the recruitment process for the new pool of co-optees for the next municipal year. So that's great. Andrew Bird is approved for the Economy Neighbourhoods panel. Item 7 is our work programme. And just to point out, we had hoped to have an update on the transformation programme for today, but the officers are working very hard behind the scenes, gathering all the information, but they haven't been able to put it all together for us for today. So we're going to have to put that back. Just at the moment, I don't know when we're putting it back to, because November's already very busy. So do members have any feelings to when they'd like to see that returning? We could try try and squeeze it in January, but it means an early start. Liz?
Do we need to see it before the budget process begins?
That's a really good point. Yeah. It would be helpful to have it before the budget process, so it would mean November, but then it's how do we squeeze it in? It would be a very, very long day, because it would be a shame to move other items. Move it on. Unless you wanted to put the domestic abuse strategy back to January with all the other crime and disorder items. I don't know. How do you feel about that? Is that nods of agreement? Do we? And when we maybe can start our meeting a little bit earlier in January, start at 9:30 instead of 10. Okay, we'll try and do that then. Is that all right, Jenny? Have you got a note of that? We'll try and do that. Right, I'm quite disappointed that Shabir Pandor's not here yet, so we'll just have 5 minutes and we'll see if we can track him down. Is that okay? Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's in the papers. It's in the papers. Yes, thank you. Just say we've now been joined. The cameras are back on. So thanks for your patience, everyone. And we're now joined by Leaders Council. And I'm sorry there's been a mix-up at the time, so we didn't realise we'd put you on first thing. But thank you for coming over and coming in a bit early. So we are, this item's all about what are your priorities. So if you want to talk us through your report, which is in the papers, that'd be great.
Thank you, Chair. And once again, I came at this time because I was told to come at this time. So if you were expecting me to come a bit earlier, my apologies. I was down for 10:45. I'm here a bit earlier. So thank you very much, Chair. You've got the presentation that I actually sent out, and I'll just sort of quickly go through the details, and I'll be more than happy to take some questions. I was asked to go away and come up with my priorities. And what I've tried to do is I've tried to actually focus it on something that we can actually measure over the next few years. First and foremost is the devolution deal for West Yorkshire and Yorkshire. As many of you know, 18 local authorities have actually agreed on a Yorkshire deal on the back of the South Yorkshire deal. That is in progress. We are still committed to actually making that happen, and I'm happy to take questions on that, but there's a lot of things happening around that. Many members will also know that I am I've reviewed the inclusion and growth strategy under the new group called Inclusive Growth Commission. The first meeting is tomorrow, and that's really about creating quality jobs, trying to actually make sure that we actually use anchor organisations and try to actually recirculate the wealth within Kirklees. A report's being commissioned by Kirklees. They've actually done a lot of work, a desktop study has been done. That report will be going to the first meeting tomorrow, and there'll be some key outcomes and key things that we need to do. That will be coming out. But at the moment, what they've done so far is they've actually looked at taking up the benefits to make sure that people's incomes are maximised, and how we can actually create more employment locally that actually pays real wages. And the third thing I'd like to mention is inclusion diversity. Again, this is quite a key thing that we need to do. And what we've done is we've actually become members of the Intercultural Cities Programme. This is a programme that spans across Europe, and it will allow us to benchmark against similar local authorities and similar countries in terms of how we are doing in terms of social cohesion within our authority. We know that there's a rise of sort of far-right extremism, so we need to make sure that we actually understand that, and rather than polarising our communities, we need to make sure our communities are actually pull together. We also need to understand neighbourhood relationships, and again, there's some tools that the Intercultural Cities Programme uses that we will be using to benchmark against how we are actually doing in comparison to our European counterparts. Also work we need to do around migrants. You know, we are a local authority that is taking in migrants from across the war-torn countries in the world, and we need to make sure that we actually integrate them and how minorities feel welcome when they come here. And at the same time, we need to make sure that any conflict that's taking place within our communities, we understand that and how we measure that, and basically learn from other examples across Europe. The other few things I'd just like to mention is many of you will know that we actually approved very recently at Cabinet a new leisure centre in the south of Kirklees, in Spen Valley, a £13 million facility. That hopefully will be completed in 2021. Now, I've got some detailed timescales which I'll very quickly go through, but I'm happy to take some questions around that. Detailed design is taking place at the moment. Planning application is actually going to be submitted once the detailed design takes place in February 2019. Tender and contract will go out in March, with demolition taking place October 2019, and we plan to construct and go on site in April 2021. So the timescales are pretty long, but construction projects of a magnitude of £13 million do not take place overnight. So there will be some detailed planning that will go around that, but they're just sort of like indicative forecast timescales. Town centre regeneration, we've commissioned ACOM to carry out some master planning work. Stakeholder workshops will be organised later on in October. There'll be some options that will be considered for the Piazza Station Warehouse, and that will be ready for the new year in terms of what we can do. There's some public realm work that we're going to be looking at. That will go to Cabinet in early 2019. This will primarily look at Cross Church Street, Queensgate and New Street. There's some combined authority match funding that we've actually secured, which needs to be delivered by 2021. This includes Station Gateway, £10 million, A62 Smart Corridor, £8 million, and Southern Gateway, £10 million. It's a highway scheme. So that's just Huddersfield. In terms of Dewsbury, we've also commissioned some work around master planning to be taking place for Dewsbury. Many of you will know Pioneer House is a priority for us. Back on site, in terms of there was a delay in construction, that will be opening in 2020. Springfield campus, this is a new college building, that's now open. We have some funding from the Combined Authority, and there's some public groundwork that's taking place as we speak. If you go past the Dewsbury train station, you'll see a lot of work that's taking place in terms of actually improving the frontage of the ring road and the station, which will open up the station to the rest of the town. There's some heritage action zone work that's taking place at the moment. We've used £2 million to bring some more buildings back into use. In the pipeline is planned some CPO work. There's a report that's getting finalised for Cabinet, so I can't tell you the details of which CPOs we're going to be carrying out because it's confidential at this moment in time, but that will be going to Cabinet very shortly. There's some work that we're doing for the Dewsbury Arcade, and again that's being done part of the master planning work, which will then come back to the council. And we've got a fantastic market in Dewsbury, and again we're trying to make sure that that market is actually flourishing and it actually sort of like becomes a vibrant market, and it becomes an exemplar nationally. And again we've got some ideas that are going on around that. And the final thing is delivering 10,000 homes in the next 5 years. A lot of the work has actually been commissioned on this through the local plan, and the local plan will be coming back to this council sometime at the end of December, early January. And there's some big schemes, like Council Gulfham will know that Dewsbury Riverside, there's also some work that's been taking place at the moment at local level with local ward members. So hopefully we'll be ready to run on that. There's some specialist accommodation that we're actually looking at as part of this scheme, extra care housing. And again, many of you will know that we've actually applied for accelerated grant funding from the Combined Authority. That's been approved, so that will allow us to actually bring forward some schemes to actually make sure that we actually achieve the target of 10,000 homes. We've got a affordable housing programme team that's in place, ready to go out to market, and there's 8 sites that we packaged, around 100 units. That report came to Council Cabinet about a month ago. So again, we're actually in the process of actually commissioning that work. We're looking at Bridge Homes Partnership. This is a company that's based in Wakefield. It's actually part of Wakefield District Housing. So we're looking at commissioning them to actually do some work around the work that we're doing in terms of developing these 10,000 homes in the next 5 years. North Bradley Road, Huddersfield. This is a site that's actually just on Bradley Road, overlooking the motorway. That site's getting assembled, and we hope to deliver 1,500 homes in there in the next few years. So I've just done a quick whistle-stop tour of what my priorities are. I'm sure members will have many questions. I won't pretend that I pretend to know all the answers, but I'm happy to come back and provide some answers if I can't answer them. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, do you have questions? Liz.
The Intercultural Cities programme, they said we've just joined that. Yeah. Is that part of West Yorkshire work, or is it ourselves alone? And do we have to sign up to any policies and procedures as part of that work as well?
Thank you, Councillor Smage. It's not part of West Yorkshire Combined Authority. It's actually another piece of work that we actually joined to actually make sure that we actually get the rich diversity around what's available out there. It's really providing some information in terms of where we stand in terms of certain indicators. I mentioned social cohesion. So it will give us an indicator in terms of where our local authority sits within Britain and how Britain sits within the context of other countries. We've just very recently joined, but I'm happy to come back and provide some more information on that in terms of the detail behind that, because there's a lot of work that we're actually doing on that. The person who actually leads on that, I think nationally, is someone called Phil Wood. I don't know if you know him, but he's actually a local person who actually lives in Huddersfield, and he's the one who actually sort of like, does a lot of work around Europe and building bridges between communities. So I'm happy to bring some more detail back on that. Literally, we just joined about a month ago.
I was just wanted to know a bit more detail around it, because you said it was about benchmarking, but I wondered if it had more benefits than just benchmarking, and whether it was actually there was policies that you put in place as a result of it, or there was help from them to discuss areas of diversity and things like this.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's been like Brexit, isn't it, Chair? That we're all talking about it, but we don't really know what the impact's going to be until we actually, sign the deal in the next couple of weeks. And Councillor Smith is absolutely right. There's no point in just benchmarking, right, and leaving that information and gathering dust. Whatever the benchmark tells us will then give us some detail in terms of where we stand, and what we need to do. We need to actually aspire to become in the upper quartile of our counterparts in Europe. And to enable us to do that, we need to then develop some policies. Then policies will be approved at Cabinet and then Council, and then behind them policies we need to develop a strategy. But we are in actually quite unusual times, because Brexit itself is actually generating a lot of unrest, not just for people in the UK, but also people in Europe, because they will be adversely affected as well. Like one example is migrants. People who can actually come from abroad to work here or to do whatever they want. What will that mean? What does that mean for us? What does that mean for people who actually come from Europe? But there will be policies that will be developed on the back of them policies. There will be strategies that will be developed, that will be worked up, and we will then start to implement them. But we need to actually understand how we are. We need that intelligence. We need that baseline. I'm hoping that we're above that baseline, but if we're actually below that baseline, then there'll be a lot more work we need to do, and that will mean we need to actually find the money to actually do that work as well, Madam Mayor. Sorry, Madam Chairman. I said Madam Mayor, sorry.
I've just got one quick follow-up on that area. I mentioned West Yorkshire as well, because I wanted to know as well what work we're doing with other councils in West Yorkshire in relation to this, and where we were in relation to their work as well.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, I was asked to bring my priorities, and that's what my priorities are, as you have on the piece of paper in front of you. If Councillor Smith wants to know more about the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, I will be happy to brief separately, but I want to focus on my priorities, and West Yorkshire Combined Authority, although it's a priority, I've not bought that here.
Sorry, I think maybe you misunderstand. It is about the inclusion and diversity in intercultural cities that she's asking, which is about, is that something that's done throughout West Yorkshire? Does she lead on the West Yorkshire?
No, it's not, Madam Mayor. Madam Chairman.
Okay. Gulfand next, and then Carl.
Thank you, Chair. Shabir, this is very close to my heart. I represent a ward which is multi-complex issues with different, demographics, and it's kind of changing across in the last 10, 20 years, and it continues to change, and that's the reflection throughout Kirklees. The only thing I've got an issue in relation to the overall is when you have membership of this and we go around looking for other ideas, sometimes you realise is that we need to pick the ideas and examples and projects that actually fit in to our own demographic, to our own perceptions. We can't just take every single item and say, that fits us. It doesn't. I mean, one example that we have in Kirklees, if you go back 15 years ago, some of the issues that we had in Kirklees have changed, and in the last few minutes, and this is no kind of personal criticism towards yourself. The thing I've realised is we tend to use the words like the immigrants and the migrants. If you look at the issue on that particular scale, it's actually very, very small. But if you, majority of the time, it's actually, I call perception and the reality. Perception, what people feel, what people think, and when you actually look at the reality, is completely the opposite. And one key thing we need to do is, when that's heading, is rather than reading reports and statistics and facts and figures, we actually need to get that perception out there that if, for example, what is the perception on migrants? What is the reality of it? And sometimes our discussion and some of the stuff that we talk about overtakes the Chinese whispers, and somebody said this, and this is what I've heard. And when you actually look at the facts, it's turned on its head. So, I mean, like I said, I've seen my own, Dewsbury South, where I grew up, and I've seen the area change from, how things were and all the rest of it. And when you talk to people, even the senior officers who've gone to visit certain areas, and years of having knowledge and experience of these areas in Kirklees as a whole, they've turned around and said, you've dispelled all the myths in kind of last 2 hours. And I was shocked. These are senior officers of the council who've worked for years. And when they take a visit or take part in something, they realise, actually, I didn't realise this happened. Now, if you take that snapshot and actually go across what the members of the public are doing, exactly the same. So, I mean, it's great, the work that we're doing, but let's not take every single piece and saying that this is going to fit inside this box that we're in.
More of a comment there, Chairman, than the question, but I understand the comments Councillor Gulfam as if he's making. And you've got some interesting observation, Councillor Gulfam. I'm not saying that one size fits all. That's not what we're saying. But what we need to understand, how we actually fit in within other European countries. And Councillor Gulfam is right. It's all about perceptions, hearts and minds. But that's what we're about as councillors. When I go out in my communities, right, I don't talk about data and statistics and comparisons. I go out there and feel the community. I try to understand my communities. And one of the things that is very, very clear, that we are taking more migrants in from the war-torn countries than a lot of the local authorities that are like the shires. We have got good examples in Huddersfield, and now we've increased that taking in of communities to North Kirklees in Dewsbury and Batley. There is resentment towards these people. You can't hide away that fact. My parents came from India in the late 50s, early 60s, and they played their part. So did a lot of communities from the Caribbean, and we see Windrush as a typical example. It's a shame, Madam Mayor, that in the 21st century in modern Britain, we're facing issues around Windrush, and again, these communities have been here for many, many years. They've played their part. And I was at an event in Huddersfield Town Hall over the weekend, and the kind of stories, the kind of horror stories I heard, I just couldn't believe what I'm hearing. So there's no point in trying to skirt around the issues. We need to understand what the details are. We need to get the data right. Forget perceptions for the time being. And the data might tell us something that the perceptions might not be telling us. But once you get that data, once you get that local context, then you can actually start to develop policies, like Councillor Smith quite rightly said. And once you actually understand that you've got some policies, then you can start to actually develop action plans in terms of what we need to do, in terms of the settled community, in terms of the incoming community, in terms of the institutions, in terms of the organisations. So there's a lot of work to do. But we have to start somewhere. And this is why it's very important that we actually don't just look within, but we also have to look outside Kirklees.
Yeah, just want to come back. I think as a council, and please don't, they're not criticism towards you, and it's something I've realised over the last 18 years, kind of on and off on the council, realise that as a council, we too busy looking at the tick boxes, because if something happens, we're saying, well, we've ticked this, and we've got this project, and we've got that project. The reality is that you can have 101 projects in every single ward looking at these issues, and on a piece of paper, it looks great. We've achieved this, we've done this. I mean, you mentioned how we're doing this membership as an overall, and I'm just focusing on this one. How we're doing across other areas. One of the key factors to look at is anyone to spend time in a particular area where there are issues, and you would get the feel of that. That feel of it would be your perception and understanding of what it is. You can walk into Huddersfield Town, you would get a different feel. Walk into one of the other areas, and it's that kind of thing. It's almost like, you know, when you get consumers going in as mystery shoppers into shops, and people, individual companies have this wonderful idea that we've got, you know, kind of A-rating customer service. But until you go through the process of mystery shop, you're not going to realise that's a thing. When you walk into an area, you get that feel. And when you spend time, as ward councillors, we've got a huge amount of knowledge in our areas. And we can understand where the problem lies, where the issues are. It's great work. And all I'm saying is that, you know, let's look at the bigger picture, and let's not get focused on this issue, on, you know, the memberships and everything, which is great. But let's go back to the basics and take that on board as well.
Okay, do you want to comment?
Madam Chairman, a bit confused there, but yes.
Yeah. Carl, you were next.
Thank you. Just to, if I can, may I just follow up on some of the points that were just mentioned about inclusion and diversity. I was at the Windrush event, which I found really good thing to have. I'd look for a commitment from you as leader that this is something that we should have every year, not just a one-off, and we should celebrate the diversity that exists in our towns, villages, around Kirklees. I'll move on to my more substantial point. What I just want to mention is, on your priorities, perhaps what's not there, and I'm thinking about green credentials, in particular air quality. Air quality is currently a major local, regional and national issue. The Council monitors and reports on this to the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. Last year, following the monitoring that took place, there were seven new areas identified where air quality objectives were being breached, and they were identified as air quality management areas. Now, the law states that we must within a year produce an action plan for the areas detailing all the measures we're going to take to improve air quality. I know there's lots of concerns from residents and my own around health, and also from residents around house prices, and also concerns about where we're building houses at the moment, some of them within these 7 new areas that have been identified. So I'm just wondering if you could comment on the air quality strategy and how this is a priority for you going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Beck, for the 2 points. The first one, Windrush. It's a massive issue, Madam Chairwoman. One of the things I've also learned is on the back of Windrush, there's also the Black History Month that's coming up. And I was shocked to learn that some authorities have actually got rid of the Black History Month, and they've actually rebranded it as Diversity Month. That dilutes the whole agenda around Black African Caribbean communities, and Windrush is part of that, because the issue that's been highlighted around Windrush primarily affects African Caribbean communities, Madam Mayor, who I mentioned earlier on have actually put in a lot into this country. One of the things I actually said on Saturday, and I think a few councillors, Councillor Walker was there, that this is not the end, this is the beginning. Because it's great me coming and doing my little speech and, you know, having some ackee and saltfish and some dumplings. and then going away. But that's not what it's about. It's about making sure that we actually show some commitment behind it. And I am committed to that agenda. I am committed to the whole agenda around equality and diversity in its wider sense. So that's a given. In terms of air quality, that is a priority for the Cabinet. Councillor Peter McBride and Councillor Naheed Mather actually lead on that. So, I'd be more than happy to refer Councillor Carl Burke to my Cabinet colleagues who are actually doing a lot of work around air quality and developing the sort of like a cutting-edge air quality strategy. So I'm happy to pass that on to my colleagues who actually lead on this area of the work, which is a priority for my Cabinet.
Yeah. I welcome your thoughts on Windrush and other events that we hold throughout the year, and I think it's very important that we continue these, and you as leader give a commitment that we should be celebrating these events, not just as one-offs, but continue to celebrate everything and the diversity in the communities that we have. And I know there was, and your own speech as well at the event, was quite inspirational speakers there, speaking about their own experiences, backgrounds and struggles that they've had, and I think that's very important that we don't forget that and we share that as much as we can and help that inform us as we go forward. With regards to the air quality strategy, I think it's important that all members are aware of the issues that we face, and also in particular those 7 new areas that were identified as having breached the air quality objectives and that now have air quality management areas in place, that we inform and keep all members updated so that we then can speak to residents and be confident that we have a good air quality strategy in place. So I'd be interested to know and find out more about the strategy itself.
Yeah, thank you, Carl. What I will do is, like I said, it is a priority for the Cabinet in terms of air quality, and I will ask the relevant Cabinet member to directly make contact with Councillor Carl Burke to go through the details of that strategy.
I've got next Rob, then Liz, then Golfan, in that order. Rob.
Sort of point of information really about air quality strategy. That is coming to the Economy and Neighbourhoods Scrutiny panel in the new year, so there has already been discussions with the Cabinet members and with the people in the policy team who are working on that. So I would hope that people across the council, not just members of the panel, would come along to that if they are interested, and obviously it would be good to give people the opportunity to ask questions as well at that panel. Coming back to some of the points that were raised earlier about the inclusion and diversity, from what you're saying, a lot seems to be about the collection of data and benchmarking, comparing our situation with what's happening elsewhere, which is fine, but I think it's what you do then with the information you collect from that is really important. And 2 things that spring to mind. I think one of them is very much following on from comments made by Gulfam. You can look at perceptions in 2 ways, really. One is understanding what people's perceptions are, but I think we've also got a duty to ensure that people's perceptions match the reality. So I think one thing I would like to see happen is that accurate information about diversity, the makeup of different groups within our society, within Kirklees, is made more accessible to people. I am a member in a ward which is not that diverse compared to other parts of Kirklees, and I think it worries me sometimes that there is some misunderstanding really of the actual situation, just in terms of things like numbers of people, migrants coming into the country, the number of asylum seekers we've got, and so on. I think the more clearly we can give people the real picture, the better. The other thing I wonder about as well is to what extent are we going to use the data to seek the support that we need to be able to cater for, especially where we've got asylum seekers and refugees coming into this area. If we've got a higher number than some other authorities. Are we working to ensure that that's reflected in terms of the resources that we are provided with to ensure that those people are integrated effectively into our community?
Thank you, Rob. And firstly, thanks for the clarification around air quality and the panel that you chair. And you do some really good work around economy neighbourhoods. And I'm really pleased that you're actually scrutinising the air quality strategy, which just adds value to what we're doing. So I appreciate and thank you for that. In terms of the comments you made and the questions in terms of gathering data, intelligence, yeah, that's great. But then what do you do with it? And that's the key question, Madam Chairman. Keep on calling Madam Mayor. And those of you who know me know that I'm actually very outcome focused, and that is a very clear message that's going out in the organisation. So what? You know, we want to actually see what's actually coming out from the other side. So it's not just about the quantitative data; it's also about the quality data. And the quality data, I believe, Rob, is about the perception stuff. Well, that's the qualitative stuff. And that's the stuff that we pick up. And Councillor Gulfam actually mentioned that we know our community as councillors. We know what the issues are. And that is a very critical part of what we're picking up in terms of the quality information that's coming through. In terms of the immigration asylum seekers, the work we're doing around that, Councillor Rob Walker is quite right that we are taking more than our fair share in comparison to a lot of local authorities up and down the country. Locally, we have an organisation called DASH, Destitute Asylum Seekers in Huddersfield, and our MP, the new MP, Councillor Thelma Walker, is part of that, and she's done some fantastic work around that. And one of the things we're actually facing is, although there's some pots of money that's coming through from the Home Office, it's far short of what we need. I'll give you a quick example. Every month, we actually meet with the Home Office, and each time we meet, we actually raise the issues around how we are being disproportionately affected by the government putting more and more cases towards us in terms of asylum seekers that are coming to Kirklees. At the same time, we raise issues around accommodation, issues around houses in multiple occupation, issues around the pressures that our schools are facing, issues around issues around crime and community safety, and all that costs the public, Madam Mayor. And what we are arguing towards the government is we need to actually make sure it's resourced fairly. As a council, we will not shy away from our responsibility. We are actually working with local partners, voluntary organisations, and we are doing a really good job. But I think there's a lot more that we can actually do if we actually get fair funding, and that is something that we keep pressing, not just through the Home Office meetings, but also with various other stuff that we do with the government offices. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Just before bringing Liz in, this inclusion and diversity and community cohesion is something that's on the work programme for the management committee, something we're exploring. So I'd like to know how and I'm not asking you to do that now because we're going to have shorter time, but we need to pick that up, and we'll need that information about the Intercultural Cities programme and how it's being fed into those two different strategies that are being developed. And it is something I think we're going to want to explore in a lot more detail, because I kind of have similar concerns about how existing community networks are being involved in that, how we're measuring things, how our members being engaged, and how we're working across boundaries. So I think there's a lot of issues in there. We don't have time to explore today, but when we pick it up on our work programme around community cohesion and inclusion and diversity, we want to understand more about that. So then, Liz, sorry, Rob, did you have a supplementary? No, sorry, Liz.
Yeah, just quickly on the air quality. The new management areas went to Cabinet in August of last year, and the air quality management area orders were formally sealed on the 1st of November. Now, I realise that there's been a High Court case or something that officers have been waiting for in relation to the action plan, to doing the action plans. But it is concerning that it's a priority for Cabinet, yet there's no discussions as yet even started on action plans for those new areas that were declared last year. And I'm wondering if you can do some investigation as leader of the council into that, because obviously the delivery of the housing element, your town centre regeneration, all your priorities actually can link to air quality as well. So I wonder if you could take that away, please, and look into it, please. But also on your delivery of your housing elements, the infrastructure that's needed. What sort of work are you looking for in relation to infrastructure work to support that housing development? And your town centre regeneration, you mentioned Dewsbury and Huddersfield. Do you have any priorities around any of the other towns and villages in Kirklees? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. The first point in terms of the air quality strategy, and the 7 areas that were categorised as high risk. Just so that the listeners are aware of the history behind this, quite late in the day, after a number of years, the government suddenly came back and actually identified these areas, like Liz mentioned quite rightly. And it wasn't just in Kirklees, it was actually nationally. So all of a sudden, all local authorities were put in a position where they had to actually find from a limited pool specialists that can actually go and carry out environmental impact studies. Bearing in mind, the pool of professionals in this area is very, very limited. So that is why we are actually part of many authorities who actually commissioned this piece of work to actually understand what the impacts are. And if the pool is only limited, we can only sort of push that pool so far. But believe me, Madam Chairman, work is getting done on that. But we can't squeeze something right here that's not there. Because every single authority that actually is tapping into that resource to actually get these studies done. So that's point number one. So that really is something that nationally right here, the LGA is pushing the government to actually look into, because the capacity isn't there nationally. That's point number one. Point number two, I think Rob mentioned this, but I need to just highlight that again, that the work is actually being done and it is going to be scrutinised at a future Economy and Neighbourhood Scrutiny Panel meeting. So I think that's where the detail needs to be debated. Those elements in terms of the housing infrastructure, Madam Mayor, I'm sure I don't need to tell members how to suck eggs, but that is part of the planning process. The planning process to look at the infrastructure, and that is a separate function of the council. So that should actually look at the infrastructure and everything around that. And in terms of the final point, I'm trying to read my writing. In terms of Dewsbury and Huddersfield as my priority, this is my priority, but the Cabinet also has priorities in terms of working with in other areas. But this is all in the backdrop of £197 million cuts, Madam Chairwoman. If we didn't have these cuts, right, we'd be in a very different place. So I don't want to get political, but we have actually been cutting since 2018 for the last 10 years. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to actually put some investment back in, whilst we're actually still cutting. There's some more cuts that will be facing this council in the next few years. And many of you will again know but that there is no certainty of local government funding after 2020. There's a fair funding review that's been taking place at the moment, but that fair funding has not actually got any new funding in there. So it's an argument of actually looking at lobbying the government to make sure that we actually do get the resources that have been stripped out over the last 10 years.
Just before I bring up, I think when Liz asked about infrastructure, I think it's a much wider than a single planning process. Sorry, Liz, do you want to pick that up?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, if you what your priorities were in relation to infrastructure, because it is more than just one planning application. I think there's other areas which have actually looked at the infrastructure before the planning applications have come in, and being proactive in that. And so I'm wondering what your priorities are in relation to that. Are you just dealing with it, going to deal with it a plan application at a time? Are you going to look strategically and look at the infrastructure that's needed? I'm not going to labour the point, but just to clarify, the action plans that I'm talking about in relation to air quality, they're for Kirklees to complete.
Yes,
but the infrastructure, I want to know if it's strategic or whether it's just by plan application.
So my apologies. I think we're talking about planning applications, but I accept what Councillor Smedge is saying. I did mention my priorities around infrastructure. That A62 Smart Corridor, we've got some money to actually look at the highways infrastructure, £8 million, and there's also the Southern Gateway Highway Scheme, £10 million. And Councillor Guffam, if you know that in the riverside area of the development, we are looking at the infrastructure insofar as we're actually looking at putting a brand new station somewhere. You know, so these things are being looked at, Madam Mayor, so they're not really actually doing isolation, but there is a lot of detail behind this. And as one person who actually is a leader, right, yeah, and we've got thousands of people who work in the organisation, I can't, humanly, it's impossible to carry all that information in my head, but I'm assured that all that infrastructure stuff will actually be looked at, and we are putting bids in as we speak.
Can I bring in Gulfam, then Carl, then Rob, and then I'm going to have to wind it up. So Gulfam next.
Thanks a bit, Chair. Just to go on that, the new station is going to be Ravensthorpe. It's not a new station, they're renovating it. You've got two lines going in, one from York, Leeds to Manchester, and the other one from Wakefield, and they're connecting, so both of them, all the users have access to both of them, so that's kind of already started. The two questions I've got to ask is, clean air zone. If you ever driving behind a bus in town or anywhere, you realise some of the old buses that they churn out huge amount of, kind of pollution, and you've got to roll the windows up. When it comes to the clean air pollution, trying to clean your air in town centres and other areas, some, such as Leeds, Manchester, others, have taken on board and gone to the next stage where they're going to introduce a congestion charge, kind of branded clean air zone charge. I'm happy, and I will 100% support in terms of trying to clean air. Let's not go down that route of actually, whether it's in the coming years or the coming months, where we kind of start looking how we charge people to come into town centres. We've got an issue where the town centres are going down, declining in terms of people using it the way they are, what we used to see 20, 30 years ago. So by introducing any other form of a charge, it's bad enough. It's just going to go down the hill. So that is just... The second question is, with the 10,000 homes being built across the area, a simple yes or a no. Do you think the 106 money which is going to go into these areas should stay in these wards rather than being distributed throughout Kirklees? So the 106 money which is going to you're going to generate from individual housing projects in different areas, do you think that should stay there to help the residents in that particular area rather than taking the money away and saying let's use it in somewhere the other side of the ward, council?
Thank you, Gulfam. In terms of charging and policies and congestion charges, right? Yeah, if you want to do that, you need to take that, bring that to the Labour group, and we debate that, because that's a policy decision and a budget decision. And I don't. He said he wants it.
Sorry. I said, I made it clear, I don't want this. I'm happy for the clean air zone to go ahead and, improvements being made. But when it comes to charging, that's literally a no-go area, because it's going to destroy the towns. It's going to basically make it worse for anyone driving into town and saying you've got to pay an extra charge.
I think it is something... Right, I think there's something that's not on the table yet, and I think it's just preemptive, because other cities have done it. Can we make sure... Yeah. Can we make sure we don't do it? That's what he's asking, I think.
Okay. I hear what you're saying, and what you're saying is a discussion that really needs to be taken outside this remit of this scrutiny panel. The other point in terms of 106, yeah, 106 is actually a statutory instrument, right? Yeah, and it's very, very clear what you can use that money for and what you can't use that money for. So as long as you're actually using that money for within that context, like we've actually got some 106 in our ward, and we've actually used it within the ward, and that's primarily the main reason for it. So I don't really understand that, what your question is, unless you had some problems with 106. The question really is, right, the 106 money that we actually should be getting, are we getting that money from the developers? And I think the question there should be what we're doing about that. And I think you'll find that if you do an analysis of all the 106 monies that are due to the council, it doesn't all come back in development. You usually find a way to actually restart their obligation, and that's where we need to actually focus on.
Just a follow-up question on the 106 is, firstly, we need to change the rules. Yes, it is the money which come in, we need to collect it, because there's a huge chunk that we're not collecting. As a council, we're not collecting it. So we need to change the parameters in terms of when the developer starts doing something. No, I know, but I'm saying is there is a big gap. The issue that I have, and the question I wanted to kind of ask is, and which I did, was the 106 money. Yeah, you're right. It's stipulated that you can use it in certain things. But in the past, over the years, you've seen the money actually being spread in other areas. So, for example, if one side of Kirklees is having that money coming through development in that area, it's being used 20, 30 miles across the other side. Now, the point is, that's not benefiting the residents. That's the key point I'm making. The money should benefit the local area, not how it's spent and all the rest of it within the parameters of it, is how it's spent in that ward.
I hear what you're saying.
Thank you. Just to go back to the air quality and what has just been mentioned about what the responsibility is for the council. The council monitors air quality and reports then to the relevant department, and then we've got to take action. But that action and the action plan is for Kirklees, and the law states that we must produce an action plan within a year after an area has been declared. So I think that's the important aspect of that. We mentioned regeneration. I'd just like to go through a point that's been mentioned already about regeneration for town centres. Also, we should be looking at our village centres and other areas and taking more of a strategic outlook on what we're doing in those areas, especially when it comes to house building and making sure that we have the infrastructure in place to deal and cope with demands of hundreds and hundreds of new houses in a particular area, and how villages and village centres deal with that and how they can cope with that in relation to parking and having everything else in place to deal with it. Third one is just on the Section 106 agreements, and I take the point that we have money allocated for different reasons. If it's for education, sometimes it's just an education contribution, sometimes it's more specific where it will mention or name a school, and I don't know, there's lots of money come into the Lindley ward in particular, which I'm aware of, for education which has not been used, but in the past money has been moved to other areas and have not benefited the people from the new houses that have had to deal with school places. Schools have not been involved in contributing to how some of this money could be best spent, and elected members have not been consulted or spoken to in how best Section 106 contributions can be used in a particular area. And I'm speaking specifically around education contributions, where I believe schools, head teachers should be made part of that process, and not just officers going away thinking, we've got the money in, it goes into a central pot and we can use it wherever we want within the authority. And I think either we get clearer with the contributions where we start naming schools, but involve schools earlier on so they can say, do you know, we can increase capacity, we can increase classes, speak to us, because at the moment they're not being spoken to and the money is not being spent. Some of the money is being held and being sat on for quite some time. So I think there's an opportunity to start speaking to people, start speaking to the schools, particular head teachers and elected members around how money in our areas should be spent. Because when it comes to planning committee meetings, we turn up at planning meetings and we fight for a fair deal for our areas. We want the best education contributions and contributions for parks and open spaces as we can get. But then we're totally ignored when decisions are made and how this is spent, or more often how it's not spent.
Thank you. The bit in there which really is probably something that I need to comment on in terms of the council is the Section 106 stuff, which I hear what you're saying, and I'll go back and actually look at exactly how that is allocated. But in terms of village town centre and the housing stuff and the reduction in air quality and whatever, I was at a Labour Party conference last week, Madam Chairman, and our policy is very, very clear. There will be regional investment banks which will actually invest regionally and locally, and that's where the village and town centres actually will start to thrive. There's a very clear vision from the Labour Party now in terms of what it can do.
Is this a political speech,
I'm,
or is it the leader's priorities?
Yeah. Madam Mayor, I understand that, but the reason no, I understand that, but so a lot of the questions I've asked, right, yeah, and we are politicians, right, yeah, and the previous the previous questions were related to national policy stuff, right, yeah, and I can only tell you what we will do. You know what I'm saying? I'm not having a dig at any of the party. I'm just saying that I accept what Councillor Carl Burke is saying, but a lot of the responses, like for example, a lot of the schools have been academised, and the whole notion of academisation, right, yeah, makes that local authorities control is not there really, and that's why sorry, say again. We've got quite a few academies in Kirklees, and yeah, but we've still got some, right? Yeah, and that's why one of the things that was announced last week, that there'll be a national education service. So that's the only point I'm making. And in terms of air pollution, again, very clear targets were set last week. By 2030, the air quality, right? Yeah, of what the conference announced last week will be down to 0. Yeah,
it's great ambitions for that at the conference, but we're in about Kirklees facts.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, Madam Chairman, is a lot of the issues that were discussed and highlighted, right, yeah, are based on national policy, and in terms of we've got to understand that if we've actually had an impact,
sorry,
193 million
trying to look at how does that relate to Kirklees policy in action?
Because Madam Chairman, the point I'm making is right, yeah, if we've actually sustained cuts year on year, yeah, then we can't do everything what we've been asked to do. And a lot of the issues that Councillor Calbert raised, quite rightly, yeah, we need national policy, right, yeah, to actually sort of national government investment, right, to actually make that happen.
Sorry, final question. Oh, was that a supplementary? Okay, brief supplementary then. Rob's the last one then.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I take some of your point. Obviously, I'm not interested in what a Labour Party may or may not do if they were to win or not win an election. I'm interested in the action plan for Kirklees and how we implement that, because this affects our communities, our residents. With regard to Section 106, would you commit to having a better process in place when it comes to allocating the funds from Section 106 contributions, where we do involve elected members and we do speak to the schools, not making it a long, drawn-out process, but speaking to them in a more formal way where their contributions are considered as to how best the education money can be spent in our areas, which would benefit the children from these new houses, and that we can put the best structures in place to provide top quality education for all of our schools. And also, you mentioned academies. Are you saying that academies shouldn't receive Section 106 contributions?
Section 106, I'm happy to look at that, Madam Chairwoman, and in terms of working with partners and schools and everybody, and I think that is the right way forward. So I don't agree with that.
Just ask the 106. There's the whole document could be that emailed across.
Yeah, we're running out of time for that. Rob, this final question, and then I'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I wanted to have a look at another aspect of the priorities, looking at inclusive growth. I very much welcome the focus on inclusive growth. I think it's really important to focus on the development of the economy to benefit the people of Kirklees in terms of well-being, living standards and tackling inequality. My question is really, how is this going to be integrated into the refreshing of the Kirklees economic strategy, which is taking place at the moment? We've had one meeting looking at Kirklees economic strategy. We've got inclusive growth coming up next week, and I think already what has emerged is a view that the two things must be integrated more closely together. And there was some concern about the rather wide focus of the objective in the initial Kirklees economic strategy, which is something like making Kirklees the best place in Yorkshire to do business. I don't think it was felt by the panel that that was sharp enough in terms of what the benefits of the economic strategy would be. So it's integration and sharpness. The other thing, which I think is really key to inclusive growth and the work of somebody like Claire's, is developing economic partnerships. And again, I would like to see some real clarity about how that's going to happen, and reassurance that that's not just about consultation, telling people about what you're doing, but it's actually about involving people in the development of a strategy and the implementation of that strategy. So that's business, it's third sector organisations, but also it's the wider community, because if economic development's about benefiting the people of Kirklees, then you've got to talk to the people of Kirklees about what it is that they actually want from economic development. How are they going to benefit?
Thanks, Rob. Really good question. The economic strategy and the inclusive growth strategy must go hand in glove. They cannot operate separately. And if that is the feeling that you're getting at this moment in time, I will make sure that doesn't happen. It's got to go in hand in glove, because, you know, it's a no-brainer really if it doesn't. As you know, Rob, we've got our first meeting tomorrow, which I'm hoping you'll be there. And there's already a report that's been commissioned, and Claire has done a lot of detailed work on there. I think Julie, you're on it as well, aren't you? Yeah. Oh, right, okay. Yeah. Neil McElroy, who's the chief exec of Claire's, I actually met him last week at a conference, dare I say. And one of the things he was saying, and it was really good to catch up with him, was Kirklees is actually going at a pace with what he's trying to do. And we keep on getting the Preston model being branded and saying it's really a good exemplar. And what he said to me, which was quite assuring, is that Kirklees is actually going at a pace, and they're doing stuff, and they're actually getting very clear targets in place that we need to achieve. A quick example, by looking at how we contract and put our contracts together and break them up, that will actually have a lot of impact. How we actually engage with our university, how we engage with our college, how we engage with our big company like ICI. So there's a lot of work we can do in a very short period of time, but that also needs to be enshrined in the economic strategy, because that's where we can actually monitor and measure it and actually say how well we're doing. Yeah, completely agree with you, Rob, and I'm sure as the chair of the Economic Enablers panel, you will scrutinise it to make sure it happens, and I'm fully behind that. Thanks.
Right, finally then, the one thing that concerned me about the devolution thing is, I know we're waiting for a devolution deal. I know that a lot of the funding for the region is a lot that's tied up with having a final devolution deal. One of the things we've asked for in the past, which we haven't seen yet, is what projects are being developed or considered, what's in the pipeline, so when a devolution deal is finalised, Kirklees is ready to start rolling with bids and that, so taking advantage of the opportunities. Now, we do have that on our agenda for a future meeting as a management committee, but that is something that's still outstanding from previous discussions. So if you could take that back and follow up on that, that would be really helpful. Okay.
Are you talking about the One Yorkshire devolution deal? And sorry? Yeah, which is One Yorkshire devolution, which is 18 local authorities. That's not been formulated yet, so there won't be no projects or programmes that have been developed.
But the Kirklees needs to be preparing stuff so when there is opportunities, funding opportunities, they can take advantage of it. We've asked for that preparation work in the past.
Can we get together later on, because we need to just be clear what we mean, because the programmes and projects that are developed at the moment are developed for the Leeds City region and the West Yorkshire Combined Authority. The devolution deal I'm talking about is not a constituted body, so it has no powers.
We're quite aware it's not constituted and it's not finalised. What we're asking for is what, as council officers working on, so when there is a funding opportunity through the Leeds City region or combined authority or whatever, that there is something there so they're ready to bid. So yes, we will discuss this later and we want to see that as a panel. Finally is we have a meeting scheduled for the 15th of April. I'd like to invite you back for the 15th of April so you can give us progress against each of these things that you set as your priorities. Is that okay?
Can we just make the point this is scrutiny and not a council meeting?
Okay. That's all, and that's agenda completed. So thank you for your time, and thank you to people listening in today.